What is good, Josh on the Smooth Game Man, back by with yet another reaction video, baby. And today we're back with some more Anime Tuesday, man. I told you guys we were coming with 2 videos today. If you guys didn't know I was coming with 2 videos, that means you missed my first video. No, I did not miss the 2 o'clock posting this time around. There is a video up on the channel right now on that is Be First. What's on that? Oh yeah, Grit, their brand new song. So if you guys want to check that out, make sure you guys head back and check that video out, as well as all the other content on the channel we have for you guys on Anime Tuesdays, as well as any other day of the week, as I do post every day but Fridays. Sometimes we make exceptions, sometimes we don't. But if you always were looking for a video on Friday, my gaming channel got it. Smooth Got Game, we post every day over there too as well. So head over there if you want more smooth content. Leave a like and subscribe on this video if you guys enjoy me, the video reacts to the video you want more, and comment down below what other anime videos you want your boy to react to next. Now today, this is Naruto's most important deaths, ranked and explained. Better not mess this one up. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna have some strong opinions about this one. You know, I'm not a Naruto professional guru like he is, but my opinion does matter. So let's go and get into this heat, bro. Let me know down below whose death do you think was the most important.
So I got an email the other day that included an image that asked the question, you can only bring 2 of these people back. Who are you bringing back? And all of the people involved were important people who died in Naruto. Now the 9 people that I had the option to bring back were Minato, Kushina, Jiraiya.
Ooh, hold on. Let me see if I can answer this real quick. So Nagato, Neji, Jiraiya. I'm guessing it means Minato and Kushina, since it's showing a picture of both of them. Not Neji, Itachi, Sarutobi, Rin, Obito, Gramps. Which 2 would I bring back? I guess it depends on, like, if you just ask me which one would I want to bring back emotionally, it'd probably be Naruto's parents and Itachi. If I'm talking about like what would make the story interesting, give me back Jiraiya, and I don't think Obito plays much. Give me back Obito and alive Itachi would be kind of cool. I mean, that's really the only 2 ways that I guess you could really think about it. But like, yeah, emotionally, which ones would I want to bring back? It'd definitely be Itachi and then Naruto's parents. But if it's just one of these 2, I'm guessing Kushina's in the front, so Kushina.
Yahiko, Neji, Hiruzen, Obito, Itachi, and Asuma. So, like I said, 9 of the most important deaths in Naruto. And as I sat there looking at this image, thinking to myself about who I would possibly bring back, the answer seems somewhat obvious. Clouded by my own internal bias, I decided that Minato and Itachi would absolutely be the people that I would bring back. A grandfather figure for Boruto, an uncle figure for Sarada, and a closer relationship to people that matter for both Sasuke and Naruto in their adult years. However, as I sat there, I thought to myself, would Minato and Itachi really be the best people to bring back? I mean, yes, I love them both. Yes, they're both ridiculously powerful. But would they be the best people to bring back? And that line of thinking brought me down this weird
I wasn't thinking,
road, where instead of thinking of who
maybe
I want to
Obito would
bring
be cool
back to life, I found myself rather thinking about whose death I would want to
Obito
try
and
to prevent.
Jiraiya?
See, because every single
just
death
try to
in
prevent.
Naruto
Okay.
comes with consequences. However, some deaths come with a lot more consequences than others.
I guess
Hundreds,
Asuma
and
was
I mean
kind of pointless.
literally
We could have kept him
hundreds
alive.
of named characters die in the
Out of
Naruto
everybody
timeline.
else.
However, if I genuinely asked you to name every single character who died, you could probably name what? 20, and that's if you know a lot about Naruto. And that's because objectively, some characters' deaths mattered more. And thus this image being sent to me sent me down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out whose death in Naruto mattered the most. Whose death generated a ripple
Wouldn't it
effect
be
so
Rin?
large that it
If
changed
she
the
didn't
fabric
die,
of the entirety of the
Obito doesn't
Naruto universe.
switch.
And whose death
She might be the most important
was
one. I'm
just
not
kind
gonna
of
lie
a
to you.
death. And as I thought and
that's
thought and
really-
thought on this topic, I slowly but surely whittled down what I found to be the 12 most important deaths in Naruto. Deaths that, if they didn't happen, would have changed the story of Naruto forever, be it for the better or the worse. And today, I want to talk about those deaths, but more importantly, I want to rank and explain those deaths.
Fair enough.
Because today, we're talking ranking and explaining the most important deaths in Naruto. But before I get to making you guys bust out your tissues for this here video, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. So, I'd like to...
Now, the only reason I'm saying this too, before we even jump into the explanation, why I would say Rin is my number 1 right now, no explanation needed into it. It might change as he explains. If Obito had arrived on that battlefield and saw that Kashi actually protected Rin, or she was still alive and he could have jumped in to fight, he would have just went back to the leaf. Now what would Madara have done? Because he's on the verge of his deathbed. He said he would have loved to use Sasuke, but would he have been alive long enough to get to where Sasuke is born? I mean, who knows what happens if? And then, like, obviously, Minato would have still been Hokage, so maybe he would have found a way to be peaceful against the Uchiha. The Uchiha massacre doesn't happen. So I'm just saying, like, you know, what would have? Because obviously he doesn't die because he can't get stabbed in the back by a finger. I think that's the most important, the most changing death to me.
To acknowledge the fact that there is a lot of deaths we're not going to be talking about today. Because if I tried to whittle this list down to literally every single death of any slight import, the list would be 40 or so entries long. So the deaths that we're going to be talking about today are going to exist within the boundary of Naruto's ish timeline. Now, I say ish because some of the deaths that we're going to talk about do come before Naruto was born, but just barely. Now, this is an important distinction because a lot of really important people die in the early, and I mean really early parts of Naruto's timeline. So to just get ahead of it, we're not going to be talking about people like Hashirama, Tobirama, Izuna, the first Raikages, the first Mizukages, the first Tsuchikages, the first Kazekages, Kawararama Senju, Tajima Uchiha, Butsuma Senju. Because while literally everyone I just listed is A, not only dead, but B, their death creates a massive ripple effect in the Naruto universe that makes the present as we know it. Same could be said for people like Hanzo the Salamander, Sakumo, Sasori's parents, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of important deaths. And thus, when it really comes down to it, the qualifications for the deaths we're going to be talking about today are that they have to happen within a couple of years of Naruto's lifetime, and they have to happen on screen. And with all those rules out of the way, I want to do a couple of honorable mentions here. Those honorable mentions being basically anybody who died during the Uchiha Massacre or the lead up to it, with the two or so most important people from that list being Shisui Uchiha and Fugaku Uchiha. Both of these deaths are massively important. Shisui's death obviously snuffed out one of the most promising Uchiha prospects who probably would have been able to sway the tide of the Uchiha coup for whatever side he was battling on, and his death allowed for both Itachi and Danzo to get their hands on one Kodomo Matsukame each. However, in the grand scheme of things, Shisui's death isn't really all that important. See, if Shisui hypothetically hadn't died, then he most likely would have been beside Itachi on the night of the Uchiha Massacre. He was the spy against the Uchiha prior to Itachi. He was a large reason why Itachi actually swung to the side of Konoha. And thus the result of the hypothetical where Shisui isn't killed by Danzo and Itachi is that he goes through with the Uchiha Massacre alongside Itachi and is branded a traitor just like Itachi. And most likely like Itachi, he joins the Akatsuki as a spy for Konoha. Now obviously, as Shisui didn't have a chakra illness, he probably would have been able to be a spy in the Akatsuki for longer, and he probably could have accomplished some pretty crazy things in the Akatsuki as a spy, using his Kodo Matsukame and his ridiculous ninja prowess. He may have even been able to use his Kodo Matsukame against the likes of Obito or Nagato to change the direction of the Akatsuki. But we can't really say any of that for certain.
That
it's
would
all
be
conjecture.
interesting, though.
What we do know for certain is that Shisui's death gave a Kodo Matsukame to Itachi and Danzo. And one of those Kodo Matsukames, the one used by Danzo, never really amounted to much. And what the Kodo Matsukame given to Itachi was the reason that Itachi was able to break out of Edo Tensei and therefore go on to defeat Edo Nagato and Kabuto, therefore getting rid of all of the reincarnated ninjas. By the time that Itachi took out a lot of the reincarnated ninjas, the majority of them had already been sealed. Not only that, the entire idea of getting Kabuto to release all of the Edo Tensei that he was controlling was to get rid of Madara, who was just able to his way out of Edo Tensei in the first place. So fundamentally, the most important thing that Itachi accomplished during the Fourth Great Shinobi World's War through the usage of the Kodo Matsukame that he got from Shisui's death wasn't even really all that important. I mean, yes, obviously Itachi fighting alongside Nagato for Team Kabuto would have been a scary, scary reality. The Shinobi Alliance probably would have been able to figure it out. And if Shisui was still alive and within the Akatsuki, he also could have used his Kodo Matsukame to break Itachi out of Edo Tensei. So the result may have been the same anyways. Now, Fugaku also had an important death, but not nearly as important as Shisui's. See, because when Fugaku dies, his EMS aren't passed down to Itachi or Sasuke, they're just kind of gotten rid of. Really, the most important consequence of Fugaku's death is the fact that he's not able to enact the coup. But if Fugaku hypothetically hadn't died, then the rest of the Uchiha clan would still be dead, and he wouldn't have much coup to throw. So in the grand scheme of things, Fugaku's death also really isn't all that important. So with the honorable mentions out of the way, let's go ahead and get on into this list with our number 12 spot. Which after immediately saying that Shisui and Fugaku were honorable mentions, I regret. Because at number 12, I have Haku and Zabuza. Yeah, hadn't originally planned for that whole honorable mention bit, and having Haku and Zabuza make the list when Shisui and Fugaku don't is it's a choice. But it's in the notebook, so we're going with it. Hold up, give me a second. I can make it work. See, the reason that Haku and Zabuza's death is at the bottom of our list here is because their death basically accomplishes nothing. See, Haku is obviously the first person to ship off to the Pure Lands from this duo, and because of that, his death actually holds a massive amount of import to Zabuza. As Zabuza realizes as Haku lays down his life for Zabuza's, that Zabuza actually had a lot of love in his heart for Haku. And this moment allows for Zabuza to humanize himself, realizing he had more human connection than he ever realized. However, unfortunately, this humanizing moment is kind of wasted on Zabuza because he dies like
2 seconds
5 minutes later. Now, the humanization moment isn't entirely wasted on Zabuza, because Zabuza uses the rage of Haku's death to go and kill all of Gato's goons and Gato, essentially freeing the Land of Waves. However, Team 7 was still there. They could have done that as well. Sure, Sasuke was banged up and Naruto was tapped out of chakra, but
it helped
Kakashi was still
Naruto
there.
come up with
Kakashi
his
was stronger than
Nindo,
all of those
didn't he?
goons,
Right.
and Gato, and Sakura, though not at her strongest at this moment in time, definitely could have helped as well. Land of Waves was always gonna be freed. The bridge was built. Konoha knew about the problem. So why do Haku and Zabuza even make this list? Well, because their death teaches Naruto and the rest of Team 7 a pretty important life lesson. See, while a lot of people just talk about Haku and Zabuza's death as a moment that meant a lot to the two of them, Haku and Zabuza's death is actually a foil to what's going on with Naruto and Sasuke inside of Haku's Ice Dome Mirror Jutsu. See, Haku, immediately before flying in front of Kakashi's Raikiri, watched Sasuke do something very similar for Naruto, as Sasuke threw himself in front of the legion of Senbon that Haku was aiming at Naruto. Therefore, Haku sacrificing himself for Zabuza was both a life lesson for Naruto and Sasuke, but mostly Naruto, who in this moment realized that those who are willing to put their life on the line to protect yours are people you need to hold as close to your heart as possible, because one day they may not be there. A lesson that was immediately cemented into Naruto's heart through Haku and Zabuza's subsequent death. Thus, I'd argue that really one of the key reasons that Naruto spends the entirety of his own story chasing after Sasuke is because of the example that Haku and Zabuza laid out in front of him when he was incredibly young. Thus, who's to say without the incredibly touching death of Haku and Zabuza and the role that Naruto played in it, that Naruto would have been as fervent in his pursuit of Sasuke, possibly giving up on him long before Naruto actually did. So you know what? I know I tried to back myself into a corner earlier, but it is an important death. But not as important as our
Asuma this low?
Because coming in at number 11,
I mean, I know this is.
Listen, unfortunately, this is another death that really just isn't that important. I'm
it
not
made
saying
them
that
stronger.
any of these deaths don't carry heavy emotional tolls, but in terms of what these deaths did to the plot of Naruto, well, they just don't carry that much import. See, Asuma's death basically
helped
accomplished
Naruto
one
get back
thing and
from
one
being sad
thing
with
only,
Jiraiya,
inspiring Shikamaru to accomplish one of the greatest get-backs in anime history. And that's saying something. It created what is objectively one of the cooler fights and cooler moments in Naruto, and probably generated what is the coldest line in all of Naruto, which is Shikamaru telling Hidan that he's his god now. But like, did Asuma's death really have anything to do with Team 10 and Team 7 going to fight against the Akatsuki? No, not really. It gave it a different tenor. It gave the fight more meaning. But like, Konoha was always gonna clash with Hidan and Kakazu, and they were probably always gonna die. Even if Asuma had just been heavily injured in this fight, the result probably would have been the same. However, because Asuma's death did 100% motivate Shikamaru to go about this fight in one, a more strategic, and two, a more cutthroat kind of way, that did generate some of the greatest moments we've seen in Naruto, and ended in the death of Hidan and Kakazu, the zombie trio, and two members of the Akatsuki zombie duo. I don't know why I said trio. I'd say it is technically more important than Haku and Zabuza's death that kind of just amounted to a life lesson. It's definitely not as important as our number 10 entry, which is, well, it's going to be controversial because coming in at number 10, we got Jiraiya. Yeah.
Naruto, you cool with this game?
Jiraiya's death doesn't really accomplish anything.
Just so y'all know, bro. Naruto back there sad as hell with his death. He crying right now. What did you do? What did you do?
See, if we're being 100% real and 100% non-biased here, Jiraiya and Asuma's death basically accomplish the exact same things. Team 10 and Asuma go up against the zombie duo without understanding what Hidan or Kakazu's abilities are. And over the course of their fight, they're slowly but surely able to figure out things like Hidan's immortality and Kakazu's Earth Grudge fear. And thus, it's really not until the end of the fight that they figure out how to counter this relatively strong duo from the Akatsuki. But the moment that cements exactly how their abilities work to Team 10 is Asuma's death. Because as Shikamaru and the rest of Team 10 have to watch Hidan stab himself through the heart, exploding Asuma's, they realize that once Hidan gets some of your blood, he's able to implement any damage that he does to his body onto your body. And fundamentally, That is all Jiraiya accomplishes. See, yes, Jiraiya is fighting a much harder battle.
That
and he
makes
fights much
Naruto
more
that much
valiantly
stronger,
than Team
though.
10,
I don't know if he
destroying
would've
4
learned
out of the
Surge
6
Jutsu.
paths of pain.
He might
However,
have
the paths
eventually.
of pain have the Naraka path, which has the ability to spawn a gigantic devil whose mouth they can just throw the pain bodies into and heal them completely, which means that Jiraiya destroying these 4 out of 6 paths of pain really accomplishes nothing, because Nagato is very easily able to get back up to 6 paths of pain. And while Jiraiya's battle against Nagato does allow for him to etch a code into the back of Fukakusu, giving a note to Naruto on how to beat Nagato, it's not like Naruto really listens. The reason that Naruto beats Nagato in a fight is 1, because he's insanely strong, 2, because Minato and Kushina bring him back from the brink when he unleashes 8 out of 9 tails of Kurama, and 3 is Takno Jutsu. If you want to say that the information given to him by Jiraiya does give him a little boost in the beating of Nagato, that is pretty important. And thus Jiraiya's death gave Naruto information about how to defeat a member of the Akatsuki. Fundamentally, the exact same thing that Asuma's death did.
But Nick, what about the emotional toll on Naruto of losing Jiraiya?
I mean, yeah, what about the emotional toll on Shikamaru about losing Asuma? The guy that, mind you, Shikamaru spent more time with than Naruto did with Jiraiya. Now I get it, Naruto's the main character of the story. That's why Jiraiya is above Asuma. And yeah, if Jiraiya had survived until the 4th Great Shinobi World War, he probably would have been a pretty important asset for Team Konoha and the Shinobi Alliance. You could make that argument for literally everybody on this list. So while Jiraiya's death still makes me tear up every time I rewatch it, fundamentally from a plot perspective, it really doesn't accomplish all that much. But since we're talking about white-haired characters giving it their all and therefore their lives in battles against the big bads, let's talk about coming up at number 9, Jiraiya's teacher, Hiruzen. Yeah, Hiruzen's death is more important from a plot perspective than Jiraiya's.
Interesting.
I said it.
I don't know about that.
Hiruzen accomplishes a lot with his death. See, not only is Hiruzen able to seal away Hashirama and Tobirama's soul into the belly of the Shinigami with his Reaper Death Seal, making it so Orochimaru isn't able to summon 2 of the strongest people to ever live in the Naruto universe whenever he wants using Edo Tensei, but also Hiruzen's death seals away Orochimaru's arms, making him basically an irrelevant villain for the majority of Naruto's runtime. See, Orochimaru was the biggest, baddest villain in part 1 of Naruto. And even after the death of Hiruzen, continued to be a legitimate problem in part 1. And mind you, Orochimaru was doing all of this with a decaying body whose arms didn't work. However, the feats that Orochimaru was capable of prior to their battle with Hiruzen pale in comparison to what they were capable of after their battle with Hiruzen. That is, until, of course, they get the white Setsu body. But Hiruzen using Reaper Death Seal to get rid of 2 of Orochimaru's strongest chest pieces, and the usage of their arms severely limiting their ninjutsu ability, Hiruzen effectively with his death made sure that Konoha wouldn't have to worry about Orochimaru for years to come. And in actuality, Konoha never had to worry about Orochimaru again, because while Orochimaru was always in the shadows trying to find a perfect vessel, Orochimaru fundamentally never posed another threat to Konoha after Hiruzen's death. In fact, the next connection that Orochimaru really had to Konoha was bringing back all of the Kage. Hiruzen literally beat them onto the right path, and well, probably helped that Sasuke killed them about halfway in between there, and then Itachi then sealed them in the Sonoran Nabucco about 2/3 of the way there. Hiruzen, with his death, secured a safer future for Konoha. And if Hiruzen hadn't used Reaper Death Seal there and therefore hadn't died, Orochimaru could have pretty easily destroyed Konoha, either during the Konoha Crush arc or later. But enough about the oldest entry on this list. Let's talk about the second youngest entry on this list. Because coming up at number 8, we got Neji. Yeah, the Pincushion didn't die for nothing. Now you can sit there and argue all day as to whether or not Neji died saving one of Naruto's shadow clones. He didn't. Because in actuality, if Neji hadn't tanked those wooden spikes, it wouldn't have been Naruto that died. It would have been the person who protected Naruto initially, Hinata. And listen, you can also sit there and argue all day about how important of a character Hinata is, especially by this time in the story. But if Neji didn't hypothetically jump in front of these wooden spikes, saving Hinata's life, 1, Naruto probably would have never married, meaning that Boruto and Himawari simply wouldn't exist. And 2, there's a fair to decent chance that the Tenseigan that Toneri was feeding probably never would have been destroyed. See, because in the last, Hinata as the Moon Princess, or the Princess of the Hyuga, is abducted by Toneri for marriage. And Toneri is able to reach a godlike level of power by stealing Hanabi, Hinata's little sister's Byakugan, and thus awakening in himself a Tenseigan. However, there's another Tenseigan on the moon, and that is the Tenseigan of Hamura, which is an infinitely powerful power source that was fed the Byakugan of all of the clansmen of the Moon Clan. And it's the power of this Tenseigan power source that is currently hurtling the moon moon towards Earth. However, because Hamura, kind of like how Hagoromo came down to Naruto, comes down to Hinata, Hinata's able to use the power of Hamura alongside Naruto to destroy the Tenseigan. And while there is a hypothetical universe that you could insert any other Hyuga here, it does seem relatively important here that Hinata is the princess of the Hyuga, something that nobody else is outside of, I guess, Hanabi. Listen, the real important thing here is that if Hinata is not born, then Boruto and Himawari are not born. And I hate to break it to you, but Naruto's probably not the child of prophecy. It's probably his child, Boruto. So Boruto's never born, we never get a Jogan user, and we never get the person who's probably actually going to save Earth from the Otsutsuki threat, resulting in world's domination by the Otsutsukis and everybody on Earth dying. But since none of that has happened in the Boruto manga right now, it's all speculation, which is why Hinata is actually this low. I mean, Neji. That's why Neji is this low. All that is to say that Neji's death did come with some meaning, for all of you who think that it was pointless. But unfortunately for Neji, not as much importance as actually, wait, hold up. Maybe our oldest entry on this list? Yeah, our oldest entry on this list. I lied. I'm sorry. Hiruzen's like 69, 70 when he dies. Granny Chiyo, who was our 7th entry, is 73 when she dies.
Yeah,
which is like
without her death,
not that old. They talk about her like she's been around for all of human time. That's like just hitting your stride in Japan. Anyways, Granny Chiyo, like so many other deaths on this list, died a death of a noble sacrifice, as she used her one's own life jutsu to bring Gaara back to life, trading her life for his. And while Gaara's definitely not the most important person in Naruto's story, he's pretty close, especially post the Kaze Kage rescue arc. See, because while we don't get a ton of look into what's going on in the Sand Village on an episode-by-episode basis, Naruto, Gaara's role in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War cannot be understated. Not only is he the motivating force in bringing the Shinobi Alliance together to coalesce as one unit with the speech that he makes for 80,000 Shinobi Alliance members, but he also goes on to be an instrumental part in combination with Inoki in the stopping of Madara's first meteor, which gave a lot of the Shinobi Alliance time to get away from the devastating attack that probably would have wiped out the majority of them. On top of that, he was the head of the Sealing Corps in the early part of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, being personally responsible for the sealing of multiple high-level Edo Tensei reincarnations. And while those are really kind of the only fights that go well for Gaara, as the other fights he's involved in, like the 5 Kage versus Madara and Might Guy versus Madara, and while he does play an instrumental part in those fights going as well as they do, neither of those fights necessarily end with the results that Gaara was looking for. But after this, in a post-war era, Gaara has also been responsible for leading the Sand Village, as probably the only Kazekage in history who would have joined the Shinobi Alliance. And thus, without Granny Chiyo, the Sealing Corps, which were majorly made of Sand Shinobi, would have been much weaker and more ill-fitted for wrapping up as many of the Edo Tensei reincarnations as they did. So, she gets number 7. And with now the actual oldest entry out of the way, I swear, there's no one older than her. I actually don't know if anybody older than her dies in the story. I mean, the elders, unfortunately, are still alive. And Inoki, technically, according to Boruto's manga, is still alive, but according to Boruto's anime, is dead. He dies at like 105. Anyways, let's get to our next spot, because coming in at 6th is Itachi. Now, with Itachi, we begin to enter a somewhat interesting cycle here. Because while technically Haku, Zabuza, Asuma, and Hiruzen were all brought back during the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, Itachi's death did allow for him to come back during the Fourth Great Shinobi World War stronger than he was while he was alive. And thus his death actually becomes more important on account of the fact that he was able to be brought back without his chakra sickness. So like, one, there's the repercussions of just Itachi's death, and then there's the repercussions of Itachi's death leading to his reincarnation. So the reason that he's pretty high on his list is because his death carries 2 very unique reasons for being important. Obviously, Itachi's just straight up death allows for things like Sasuke to get his EMS. It allows for Sasuke to understand what Konoha did to Itachi, setting Sasuke's eyes on the likes of Danzo, fundamentally leading to Danzo's death and his inability to take over as Hokage, which is massively important. Though one could argue that after the 5 Kage summit and being outed as using Kodo Matsukame against Mifune probably would have stopped Danzo from ever being Hokage in the first place. He did still have the root under his control, and Tsunade was still in a coma. He probably could have taken Konoha by force. And on top of all of this, Itachi's death did allow for Itachi to seal away Orochimaru and get rid of Sasuke's curse mark. And thus, with just Itachi's death alone, he was able to accomplish a fair amount. But then when you take into account the fact that Itachi's death also allowed for him to be brought back stronger, without him, there's an argument to be made that KCM1 Naruto and Killer B wouldn't have been able to defeat Edo Nagato. And there's definitely the argument to be made that Sasuke alone wouldn't have been able to defeat Dragon Sage Kabuto. And while we've already talked about how the defeat of Dragon Sage Kabuto really didn't actually accomplish all that much, and the hypothetical circumstance where KCM1 Naruto and Killer B aren't able to defeat Edo Nagato, as Itachi is 100% the spoon that stirs that drink, one and or both of them could have hypothetically died, which would have dramatically changed the course of the
Ended
fourth
the
war.
whole
Now, I think that
thing.
hypothetical is
300
a
episodes
pretty
worth.
slim chance. I mean, Sage Mode Naruto beat Nagato in a fight. I sprinkle KCM1 and an additional perfect Jinchuriki in there. They were probably going to win anyways, but it's an unignorable fact that Itachi was the reason that Nagato was sealed in the first place. So Itachi gets number 6 on the list. But I don't believe Itachi's two-pronged approach to making his death as important as it
Why you say
was
two-pronged
is
and somebody's
technically
getting
as
poked
great
with
as
a
our number
prong?
5 entries, Minato. Because Minato's got all the same arguments as Itachi, but they're just like kind of more important. See, Minato's death is massively
He helped save
important.
everybody's
He was
life
planned to be the
several
Hokage
times.
for the next 2, 3, 4 decades. He's 24 when he dies. He had decades of Hokage-ship left in him. But because of his death, Hiruzen, the previous third Hokage, has to step back up after purposely giving up the title to end the Third Great Shinobi World War. Not to mention the fact that Minato's death puts Naruto halfway on the way to being an orphan and leads to both Naruto and himself becoming equal parts Jinchuriki of Kurama. Though I would argue that Kushina's death is actually a bigger role player in the idea of Naruto becoming a Jinchuriki, because while technically Minato was the person sealing Kurama inside of Naruto, that never would have happened if A, Kushina had never lost control of Kurama, and B, if she was still a viable vessel to put Kurama back into. But more so than all the things that Minato accomplished as he was dying, Minato comes back to the Fourth Great Shinobi World War not only as a perfect Toad Sage, but also as a perfect KCM2 user. And because of this, he's able to do things like saving a majority of the Shinobi Alliance from a 10-tailed beast ball. He's able to flash in front of Madara's True Seeker orbs, allowing for Might Guy to land massive blows against him. He's able to help the rest of the Kage in summoning Team 7 back from Kaguya's dimension. He's able to be there for Naruto to transfer his half of Kurama into his body once Naruto has his half of Kurama pulled out of him, saving Naruto's life, and so much more. Fundamentally, the impact that Minato has on the Fourth Great Shinobi World War is just larger than the one that Itachi has, and therefore I believe he deserves a spot higher. Not
I see
a
we're seeing a
crazy higher,
drastic jump in the first half and the second half
about people
already.
who needed to die to make sure that Naruto could live, coming up at our number 4 spot, we got Obito.
There's 3
Obito's
people
death
better
has
than
straight
this
up
too?
the most straightforward level of importance out of
You know,
anybody on this list.
yet, though.
If Obito doesn't tank that Ashall killing bone heading for Naruto, Naruto dies. That's it. It's that simple. Naruto dies in Kaguya's gravity pyramid dimension, and then Kaguya wins. Yeah, as the only people left to battle against Kaguya would be Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sakura. And wow, that is a crazy loaded roster. They wouldn't be able to pull off the 6-pass Shibako Tensai, meaning that Kaguya probably would have slowly but surely killed all 3 of them. Yes, I understand that it was established that all 3 of them were fast enough and strong enough to keep up with Kaguya, but the win state for Team 7 at that moment in time was for Sasuke and Naruto to touch Kaguya simultaneously. Something that they struggled pretty mightily to accomplish. Take that win state out, and now they have to kill Kaguya, something they probably can't do. Add that into the fact that in Obito's dying moments, he also saved Kakashi's life, and you could argue that without Obito's death, that Kakashi is also gone, leaving just Sasuke and Sakura to fight against Kaguya, and that's not going well. So on account of the fact that Obito's death most likely saved the entire world, yeah, he's getting 4. But Nick, how is Obito, who saved the entire world, only getting number 4? Well, because it happens really late in the story, after a lot of the events that made this happen came to pass already. However, a lot of these events could be openly avoided if people hadn't died earlier on, meaning that technically these deaths, or I guess I should say the lack thereof of these deaths, also would have technically saved the world. Like our number 3 spot, Rin.
Ain't no way this is number 3. What else? If this don't happen, the whole show don't happen. Bro, I don't understand. I need to hear the explanation. What other 2?
We can all sit here and argue all day long about why Obito did the things that he did. Some people can say it was out of revenge for Rin's death, and others can say it was because Obito was disenfranchised with the way of ninjas. But all that matters is if Obito hadn't watched Kakashi blow Rin's back out in front of him, 1, neither of them probably would have ever opened their combo weight massively, changing the trajectory of both Kakashi and Obito's strength levels. And 2, Obito probably would have just rejoined Konoha. Sure, Obito was having his mind melded by Madara at this moment in time, but he didn't like Madara. In fact, even after Madara was gone, Obito didn't like Madara. He had no intention of bringing him back to life in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. It was Kabuto who did that. And thus if Rin hadn't died, or maybe Kakashi had waited a minute or 2 to kill her, Obito would have been able to slide on over to their side, reveal that he was still alive, though he is half white Zetsu now, and helped Kakashi and Rin battle against the hidden Miss Shinobi who were trying to kill her or turn her into a ticking time bomb. Now, could this have technically led to Rin losing control inside of Konoha and Isobu going on a rampage? Like, maybe. But mind you, at this moment in time, both Kushina and Minato were still alive. Both high-level Uzumaki Fu and Jutsu users. They could have very, and I mean very easily just
sealed her.
sealed Isobu instead of Rin. And thus, if Rin doesn't die, there's no evil Obito. And thus, there's nobody to help the actively dying Madara and Black Zetsu enact the Eye of the Moon plan. And while this probably just kicks the can down the road for the next 100, 200, 300 years, fundamentally without the turning of Obito to the side of evil, the Eye of the Moon plan, the awakening of Jubidara, and thus the awakening of Kaguya, never happens. I mean, there is technically a world where Madara is able to find a different disenfranchised shinobi, or Obito does go back to the warm clutches of Madara's decaying body, but I really think the easiest possible explanation to explain what would happen if Rin didn't die is that the Eye of the Moon plan wouldn't happen. And thus Rin's death, or I guess the lack thereof, is as paramount in the stopping of the destruction of Earth as Obito's, if not more so. And the same thing can be said for our number 2 spot, which is Yahiko. See, Yahiko has pretty much all of the same arguments as Rin. Madara's Eye of the Moon plan, or I guess his passing of the Rinnegan over to Nagato, was fundamentally flawed and incredibly stupid. Listen, I will argue with anybody who says that there are massive amounts of plot holes in Naruto, because I have enough knowledge to say that a lot of those plot holes are just non-explained theories. If you know enough about Naruto or know enough about Naruto theories, there's pretty much explanations for every plot hole that people will bring up in Naruto as a story, except for Madara's plan, which is asinine. Madara's plan to give his Rinnegan to a random Uzumaki child in hopes that one day that random Uzumaki child will give his life to bring Madara back to life, even though he has no connection to Madara whatsoever, is completely hinged on the idea that the child that Madara was trying to brain meld, Obito, liked Madara enough to convince said Uzumaki child to give his life for Madara's sake. And unfortunately for Madara, the kid Obito, who this entire plan hinged on, did not like Madara enough to do that. However, fortunately for Madara, that kid did still want to destroy the world. And so Obito needed to swing Nagato onto his side, but Nagato, who had the positive influence of Yahiko, didn't want to join the Eye of the Moon plan. And thus it's not until Yahiko's death at Danzo and Hanzo's hands, Nagato decides to switch over to the side of the baddies and join Obito in the Eye of the Moon plan, creating the modern day Akatsuki. And therefore, without Yahiko's death, not only is Nagato probably never controlling the outer path, aka the ghetto statue, but the Jinchuriki are not being hunted down. Their tailed beasts are not being pulled into the ghetto statue. The Eye of the Moon plan is never enacted. The Akatsuki work hand in hand with the Hidden Rain village to make the Hidden Rain a powerful and peaceful village.
But the reason I say Rin is over this is because you see Obito had to pull him to the side of evil. Meaning if Obito doesn't go evil, there's nobody to pull him. Meaning if Rin don't die, he can't go evil, he gonna pull him. Give me Rin 2, Nagato 3 still. But what is number 1?
Yahiko's death gets in the way of all of this. So just like with Rin, Yahiko's death fundamentally makes the series of events that eventually lead to the supposed end of the world. And thus said supposed end of the world could have been avoided without said death. And the reason that Rin and Yahiko's deaths are more important than Obito's death, even though they all technically accomplished the same things, is the fact that Rin and Yahiko's deaths happen sooner. And thus Rin and Yahiko's death lead to the deaths of every person killed by the Akatsuki, which is like 60,000 or so people. Obito's death just stops the world from being destroyed, which is important, absolutely important. But Obito's death doesn't stop all of the deaths up to, well, I guess Obito's death. But if Obito, Rin, and Yahiko's deaths all stop the destruction of the world,
what is number 1?
Who could be number 1? Whose death could be more important than 3 people whose death stopped all of mankind from being eradicated?
I don't even know.
Some of you may not like this, but at number 1, I got Kushina. Do you remember
We're
earlier when I said
up?
that Kushina's death is objectively more important than Minato's in terms of what it did to Naruto? That's because I meant it. See, yes, in Minato's final moments, he was able to turn Naruto into a Jinchuriki. However, those...
If Obito doesn't go evil, he doesn't go to the leaf to unleash Kurama, I'm still going Rin to number 1, because if he doesn't go evil, those last 2 things that we just number 2 and number 1 don't happen if he don't go evil. Madara wasn't getting up to go do this, and what other Uchiha was he gonna get to convince to do this? So if Rin don't die, these 2 things don't happen. I'm still going Rin at number 1. Now I will say this 2, Nagato maybe 3. Let me hear the explanation.
Circumstances never would have came to pass if Kushina was still alive and well. See, yes, Minato, while turning Naruto into a Jinchuriki, had the story that Jiraiya told him about the child of prophecy ringing in his head. And he thought to himself that surely Naruto was said child of prophecy and therefore needs the power of Kurama to fulfill said prophecy. However, if Kushina hadn't died on the night that Naruto was born, Naruto never would have became a Jinchuriki. See, Kushina, like Minato, dies at 24 years old. However, she, like Mito, was known for her unusually high life force even amongst the Uzumaki, which allowed for Mito to live somewhere in the region of 98 years, living for 10 or so years after passing on Kurama to Kushina. And thus we assume that Kushina was on a similar lifetime projection. That means that Kushina wouldn't have had to give up Kurama until she was like, what, 70? AKA when Naruto would be 46 years old. 46. Older, mind you, than he is currently in Boruto. Post time skip. And thus if Kushina hadn't died, Naruto never would have been the Jinchuriki of Kurama. In fact, it probably would have been his children, most likely Himawari, that would have had Kurama passed down to her. However, if we're being 100% real, we probably never would have seen that happen, because if Naruto didn't have Kurama, the world would be gone. I think we all need to acknowledge the fact that while Naruto did work for a lot of the strength that he has, Kurama was a massive part of his strength. And without Kurama, Naruto would have been dead 5 to 6 times over, mind you. That either in the battle against Haku or the battle against Sasuke in the Valley of the End, their first one. And therefore the world would have been without an Asura reincarnation for the rest of Sasuke's lifetime, leading to no feasible way to seal Kaguya, once again leading to the destruction of Earth. And while some of you might be like, oh, well, Kushina could have fought as Kurama's Jinchuriki, she had absolutely no control over Kurama, as we saw in Minato's one-shot manga. And while maybe with time she would be able to find more mastery over her control of Kurama, I find that highly unlikely. As like I've already said, she was 24 when she died and she had no control over Kurama. Naruto got a wrangle on Kurama when he was 16. So who's the most important death in all of Naruto? Naruto's mom. The only reason he ever got the crazy boost that allowed for him to be the main character of this story. Not to mention that if Kushina had never died, Naruto's motivations in life would have been vastly different. Because if Kushina never died, that means that Kurama never got out of her and destroyed massive swaths of the village, killing tons of people in Konoha, and therefore any ill feelings towards Kurama that Naruto had to deal with just simply wouldn't exist. And also wouldn't be directed at Naruto because Kushina would still be the Jinchuriki of Kurama. So without Kushina's death, we just don't have Naruto as a story. Oh yeah, and also the world dies. So to me, Kushina has the most important death in Naruto. But
And okay, so now I can get it now, because I was set on the fact that we were saying like, if we could permit, or which death, you know what I'm saying, like had to be, you were saying that she needs to die. Not that they don't need to die. That's what we were talking about with most of the other ones, like, oh, if they don't die, you know, you know, Ren not dying, you know, does this. No, we need her to die. He's just saying, look, we needed Ren to happen, so Obito came back and killed her, because without her dying, this doesn't happen. Not, oh, we should keep her alive, and if she, you know what I'm saying, like, basically saying that it's good she died. That was the first time I think we heard that one. That was good that she died. The other one saved the world by them, by what they were doing, or could have saved the world sooner if they didn't happen. This one saved the world because it did. So that's the plot twist I wasn't expecting. So I'll say one, but I still say Ren is better than not better. Ren is more important than Nagito. I will still say that, but I will keep that as number 1. So let me know what you guys think about it down below, man. Which one do you guys think is the most important? Now after hearing all of this, do you guys still kind of agree that that's number 1, 2, and 3 at least? Or what does your top 3 look like? If there's a death that was not listed on this, like mentioned on this, that you think should be mentioned even as an honorable mention or ranked on the top 12, let me know down below in the comment section. We'll definitely talk about it down there with you. But it's been your boy Sean, this move, I get Black Kage, Black Avatar, King Leo, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. I know he was so disrespectful saying your mom needed to die. It's alright though. But I'll catch you guys in the next one, man. I'm going for today. Peace.